Once upon a time, in a little house on the hill, Peppa Pig and her family eagerly awaited the rain. Rainy days were their favorite, bringing with them the chance to jump in muddy puddles, an activity Peppa loved more than anything in the world. From her very first jump, muddy puddles had become a source of endless joy, and Peppa's giggles would fill the air as she and her family splashed around. One quiet afternoon, a soft drizzle began to fall, dotting the ground with tiny puddles that grew larger as the rain picked up. "Look, George," Peppa squealed, her eyes twinkling with excitement. "The puddles are back! Tomorrow we'll be jumping all day!" George, her little brother, clapped his hands happily, and even Mummy and Daddy Pig shared in her enthusiasm. They spent that evening by the window, listening to the rhythmic patter of rain and dreaming of the fun they'd have the next morning. But as dawn broke, a strange mist clung to the yard, giving everything an eerie stillness. The puddles were larger than ever, their surfaces dark and glossy, stretching far across the yard in unusual patterns. The once cheerful puddles seemed to have turned somber, almost ominous. Unbothered by the gloomy scene, Peppa and George tugged on their boots and dashed outside. Daddy Pig and Mummy Pig followed, laughing as they splashed through the first puddles together. But something felt different. The puddles were darker and thicker, almost like ink, and their reflections seemed to shimmer strangely. As Peppa leaped into a large puddle, she felt her feet sink a little deeper than usual. She laughed, thinking it was just thicker mud, and jumped again. But with each jump, the puddle seemed to pull her further down, almost as if it was holding onto her boots. Her laughter faded as she looked down, noticing that the mud was now up to her ankles. When she tried to lift her feet, she couldn't budge them. Panic began to rise in her chest. "Mummy, Daddy," she called out, her voice shaky. "I can't get out." Hearing the alarm in her voice, Daddy Pig hurried over, bending down to pull her out. But as he grabbed her hands, he felt a chill run through him. The mud seemed to be pulling Peppa down. He pulled with all his strength, but the puddle only tightened its grip on her, dragging her further in. Mummy Pig tried to help, grabbing Peppa's other hand. "It's okay, Peppa, we've got you," she reassured her, though her own hands were trembling. But no matter how hard they tried, Peppa kept sinking, her little body slowly disappearing into the dark, sticky mud. George watched nearby, his eyes wide with fear, clutching his favorite toy and whispering, "Peppa." As Peppa's face sank lower, tears filled her eyes. She looked up at her family, her small hands reaching for them, her voice barely a whisper, "Don't leave me." With one last heartbreaking pull, Peppa was swallowed by the puddle, leaving only her red boots floating on the surface before they too vanished. The yard fell silent. The puddle that had taken her returned to an eerie stillness as though nothing had happened. Days turned into weeks, and the puddles in the yard never seemed to dry. Every time it rained, the puddles reappeared, as if they were waiting, watching. Mummy and Daddy Pig would stare out the window with hollow eyes, remembering their little Peppa and the laughter she had brought. George sat by the door, holding her favorite toy, his small heart heavy with grief. No one dared to jump in muddy puddles again, for they knew that something dark and sorrowful lingered within them. And so, the yard remained quiet, haunted by the memory of Peppa, their little pig who had once filled their lives with so much joy, now lost forever in the mysterious depths of the puddles. The family never forgot, and each rainy day only brought with it the sad reminder of a laughter they would never hear again.